There are a lot of voices out there in the world of health, wellness, and performance. Some, probably most of what we see on Instagram and YouTube, involve more show than go, more staged than engaged. Too often, it involves charismatic individuals who talk a very good talk, but provide very little insight into their actual walk. Or worse yet, we discover the healthy lifestyle claims, in quotes, made to sell supplements, exercise equipment, or coaching resources turn out to be the result of performance-enhancing drugs that never quite get mentioned in their script. Do those things matter? I hope so. We all have plenty of room for growth, and some things are frankly none of our business. But what if you could pull back the curtain, learn about the daily details of life beyond the sound bites? Would it make a difference? Provide some additional encouragement? Allow you to see how the various topics we've covered in our, for example, 360 episodes of the Coaching Lab podcast actually can play themselves out in real life? That's exactly the goal of this special episode. If you're new to the show, I'm Dr. Brad Cooper, your host and the CEO of Catalyst Coaching. 3 years ago, we released a podcast episode that pulled back the curtain on my own daily routine, strategies, and even looked at my blood work and physiological markers. My hope was that it might offer somewhat of a real-life look at how one pretty average guy was trying to apply specific elements of all the things we discuss here on the podcast, while providing a real example of how working with a board-certified coach, which is something I've been doing for over a decade, can make a difference. I'll turn 60 in the next year, and based on your interest to the one we did back then, we thought it was probably time to provide another look under the hood. Now, it's important to note that as much as we'd like to look at this as a cause-effect, there is no straight line existing between actions and outcomes. Yes, our choices and actions matter, and I'll do my best to share a few details about those in my own life. However, the evidence is clear that things like genetics, living situation, and plain old good luck play a significant role when it comes to health, wellness, and even performance. So let me state clearly that while I hope what I'm about to share provides some potential ideas and encouragement, none of this is intended to be medical advice, and I am not the example to follow. I'm one example. I'm a case study. I'm an N of one. That's why we believe incredible board-certified coaching so deeply. It takes ideas and evidence and then helps format them based on the individual. Hopefully what you're about to hear helps make your life and your future a little bit better in the way that fits you, not just me, and doesn't simply become a checkbox of what Brad does. Fair enough? Speaking of coaching, if you're either a coach looking for resources or someone considering pursuing a career in coaching, you may want to check out catalystcoachinginstitute.com. You'll find everything from specialty certifications to the annual coaching retreat and symposium and the date of the next MBHWSC approved coach training cohort kickoff. Or please, reach out anytime. Results at catalystcoachinginstitute.com, and we can set up some time to answer your questions. Now, let's pull back the curtain on this N of one guy who's knocking on birthday number 60. Maybe, just maybe, something I'm doing will be an encouragement to your journey on this latest episode of the Coaching Lab podcast. Now, before we jump into the details, a 2-minute history may be of interest to put things in perspective. Now, I don't want you thinking like, oh yeah, but he does all these things correctly. It's been a long journey. As much as I'd love to tell you I've always been focused on health, wellness, and performance, it's just not the case. Back in high school, which is, wow, now 43 years ago, I bagged groceries at the local grocery store. And I often worked the 3 to 11:30 p.m. shift, especially on Fridays and Saturday nights. My routine at the time was generally to purchase a dozen recently marked down donuts. They'd mark them down every night at, 11 o'clock or something, along with a cheap chemical-laden frozen pizza on my way out the door after my shift was over. And then I'd go home, watch TV, and eat it. Sounds pretty healthy, huh? In terms of sleep, 8 hours? Are you kidding me? Early in our marriage, I literally had a goal to try to train my body to sleep under 6 hours so I could be more productive. And exercise? When our kids were young, the only time I ever laced up those running shoes or did any kind of exercise is when my jeans started getting too tight. Once they fit again, I'd hang those running shoes back up until the top button got to be a struggle. Then about 20 years ago, my late 30s, I got lassoed into trying my first triathlon as part of my work as a physical therapist, and I was immediately hooked. I dropped 25 pounds in the process, and healthy living shifted from something I occasionally did to becoming part of my identity. Now, that high-intensity path continued for about a dozen years. I got an opportunity to compete in 11 Ironmans, 4 times at the World Championship in Hawaii, quite a few marathons, the Race Across America bike race, and well over 100 other races along the way. When I started my PhD work at age 50 to study the practical aspects of mental toughness, I put the serious racing to the side. Now, I still love getting out there. I still love racing. And I think it's a great way to monitor progress and enjoy time with my people, the runners, the endurance community. But it's not the same priority that it once was. On the personal and work front, Susanna and I will celebrate our 33rd anniversary this year. And gang, I've never been more in love. There is no doubt her positive outlook, her approach to life has positively influenced many of the things that we're going to talk about, physical and mental well-being, countless ways. We're also fortunate to have 3 amazing adult kids. They're all married. They're not too far away. We love having their partners in our family. And we got to become grandparents for the first time a couple of years ago. In terms of work, after I was laid off from a somewhat high-stress corporate executive role on the eve of my 41st birthday, not kidding, we launched Catalyst Coaching, and we're now in our 19th year as business owners. As any entrepreneurs out there know, that generally carries long hours and some elevated stress at times. But it also provides a level of flexibility that can pay notable health benefits as well. So I'm not complaining. So that gives you a quick summary. However, one other thing that I want to be clear about right out of the gate is I get it. I have been immensely fortunate through this journey of life. While it's been far from perfect, and every decision involves short and long-term trade-offs, I know those choices are not the only thing that have positively impacted some of the results that I'm going to be sharing. I've also been lucky. And while I'm a firm believer our daily decisions play a significant role in our odds of positive outcomes, those are odds, not guarantees. Our health and our lives can change in the blink of an eye, and I try to be cognizant and grateful for that each and every day. So with that said, let's jump into some of the core results. First of all, it's important to note that I am not taking any medications, nor have I ever taken any medications such as testosterone or had any medical treatments that would affect any of the results I'm going to be sharing today. I've had a handful of surgeries over the last couple of decades, but those are all orthopedic in nature, usually tied to a bike wreck of some sort. So on the physical front, I am just over 6 feet. I weigh between 145 and 150, depending on whether I'm spending more time in the gym or more time on the track. That puts my BMI right around 20. My resting heart rate is 43. Occasionally, it'll drop to the high 30s, but that's not the norm. My average is right about 43. And those are all weight, heart rate, resting heart rate, etc., are the same or better than 3 years ago. Getting to the weeds a little bit, for those of you who love the details, my blood pressure is currently 105/70. My LDLs are 80. My HDLs, high-density lipoproteins, are 87. So LDLs 80, HDLs 87 for a ratio of 0.9 to 1. Cholesterol is 176, and the triglycerides over HDL ratio that they look at is 0.5. Testosterone, vitamin D, and vitamin B12 are all within the target zone. In terms of physical assessments, you may have heard us talking about or referencing our personal performance ratio we created a couple of years ago. It creates an annual baseline assessment that builds in 4 different components. And maybe you want to try this at home. We'll have a link to the details on it, but it's push-ups, pull-ups, 5K time, and plank time, how long you hold a plank. My current results are 55 push-ups max, 14 pull-ups, an 18:21 for the 5K, and 2.5 minutes for the plank. So that leads, if you go through the details of that calculation, it's a 4.4. Now, that's not going to break any national records, and it's not meant to. This is something you do with yourself. You're not putting yourself into a table and figuring out, how do I stack up to my neighbor or my buddy at work or whatever. This is just for you. So you're assessing this on an annual basis, and you can see, how am I doing over time? I am happy that those 4 data points are better than they were 3 years ago. And I think I wasn't tracking it 10 years ago, but if I just think back to, how many pull-ups could I have done back then? Or, what would the push-up time be, or number be? I think it's probably better than 10 years ago, because it's a focus. It's something that I'm building into my daily life. Not those things in particular, but pursuing fitness things that allow those to improve. So again, we'll provide a link if you want to check out your own baseline, not to compare to me, but to see how you're doing over time. It's an incredibly valuable tool. So those are the numbers. Then what are the daily choices and routines that drive those numbers, at least a notable percentage of those numbers? I thought the easiest way to do this would just be to hit the 4 catalyst cornerstones: move, fuel, rest, and connect. And maybe there's a nugget or two in there for you in one of these areas that you want to focus on. So move, activity levels, that's what this category is. This is kind of weird to say, but there's no discipline or motivation in my fitness routine. It's just automated. I don't get up and ponder, what am I going to do today? It's become like brushing my teeth. If it's a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, or Saturday, I run. If it's a Sunday, Tuesday, or a Friday, I'm in our garage gym doing some strength training. Wednesday is the wild card. If I'm training for a longer running race, I'll usually drop in an extra run that day. Otherwise, it tends to be a bike. Gym time totals probably about 3.5 hours total a week, and running averages about 40 to 45 miles a week. That usually includes a track session and a tempo style run. So that's a higher effort run that's longer. And then the other 2 runs are super easy. I just get out with our Australian Shepherd Sky. She has this big smile on her face. It's so fun. I do continue putting more emphasis on strength training as I approach 60, and I plan to continue doing that as I get into and through my 60s and into my 70s. Strength training, I can't emphasize this enough. If you're over 40, don't let this one drop. Huge, huge impact on your future. And I have finally, after a lifetime of saying it was important, finally over the last about 7 years, started implementing that on a regular basis. On the running front, I mentioned I prioritize 2 higher intensity sessions, even when I don't have a specific race coming. And then during the summer and fall seasons, we live on some land out in west side of Fort Collins, and I'll usually try to carve out a few hours a week to move rocks around, pull weeds, mow, that kind of stuff. So all those are the activity side. So that's the move piece that's in many ways driving the data that I shared earlier. The fueling is similar in a lot of ways. It's somewhat automated. So dinners with Susanna vary what we eat, but they're generally healthy. But the rest of the day is pretty much automated. As soon as I wake up, it's 18 ounces of water. I'll spread 1 to 2, but generally 2 cups of black coffee between 5:15 a.m. and 10 a.m. Try to get the last one in before 10. And then I'll have a mix of 30 grams of protein powder, 5 to 10 grams of creatine, and a scoop of greens in just a shaker bottle after I'm done running or spending time in the gym. Lunchtime, again, automated. It's always a giant salad, some source of protein that goes on that salad, and oftentimes a glass of kombucha with that. Mid-afternoon snack, also pretty automated. It's a handful of almonds and 1 or 2 squares of 90% dark chocolate. Dinners, as I mentioned, pretty random, but generally involve a lean protein source, beans, veggies, and then a potato or some quinoa, something like that. And I would say that probably encapsulates 95% of our dinners that we're not eating out with friends or something like that. I generally have a glass of wine a couple days a week on average. I do not follow any type of diet. I simply prioritize veggies, lean protein, healthy fats, and nutrient-dense carbs. I don't avoid any of them. I do try to get about 110 grams of protein in a day and then complement that with the other things. I do take a few supplements. I'm not going to go into those here because they are annualized with my doc. We do a deep dive blood test. The lifestyle doc then goes through them and says, I think you could benefit from, for example, some vitamin D. So they're not chosen at random. They're not chosen based on a headline or some recent fad. I would super encourage that approach of not just adding supplements to your daily routine, but instead do a deep blood work dive, base your decisions on that. Also, I am a big fan of internalizing this concept of viewing meals and snacks as fuel, as our title of this section is called. That's preparing the body to be its best. As compared to eating, which is what I used to do, that's just satisfying the tongue. Often, usually, with empty calories. So fueling prepares the body, eating satisfies the tongue, fills the belly. Now, that doesn't mean I don't enjoy my share of ice cream once in a while and a good tasty meal. So I don't see it as a sacrifice. These things are automated, and I do enjoy those treats. I just don't make them a daily habit. Rest is our third one. This is a big one and one I've put more and more emphasis on in recent years. I struggle with sleep at times. So I've tried to integrate a lot of the tips that we've garnered from the long list of sleep experts that we've had here on the podcast. Outside of special events, basketball games, concerts, family gatherings, that kind of thing, Suzanne and I generally stick to about a 9:30-ish bedtime. I use something called Oslo Sleep Buds. We have no sponsorship connection with them, but I do really like this product. So they're Oslo Sleep Buds. And then eye covers to block out both sound and light in the early morning hours. So I don't go to bed with those, but when I'll get up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, I will pop those on, and they usually do a pretty good job. I will often take a very small, and here's the one supplement I'll mention because so many people are taking it. I want to nudge you to considering a different route with this. I'll take a very small 1 milligram, of melatonin. And I don't take it before bed. I take it in the middle of the night. So I wake up to use the bathroom. I'll take 1 milligram dose along with a bite of a banana. That gives me a little nudge of magnesium, and I tend to get hungry when I'm working out a lot, and it settles the early morning hunger pangs. Now, this melatonin dose, that is not what you're going to get at the grocery store, which is usually 5 to 10 milligrams. You can buy you want a legit company, but you've got to specifically order that or find it at a specialty store. Connect is our fourth one. As a natural introvert, this does not come easy outside of time with our family. I am happy as a clam, running with Sky, spending the day in my office, reading articles and books, and hanging out with Susanna. But I know from the data, connection is critical, and it becomes even more critical the older we get. So I have made this a priority, even though it's not a natural one. Now, I still lean towards running with the dog, hanging out in my office, etc. But I also make a point of getting out of my preferred bubble. And I want to encourage those of you listening that are like, yeah, that's me too. Please lean into this one. Some of the things I'm currently doing is I lead a weekly, it's not weekly, it's a couple times a month, men's discussion group. I've joined the local running club here in Fort Collins to do their track practice and be involved with some of their committees. Attend the university's exercise science lectures regularly. Suzanne and I are also part of a small group through our church, And the two of us enjoy a range of sporting events, concerts, those kinds of things. Now, like so many aspects of life, it's the gravity piece. It's overcoming that gravity, getting out the door that's hardest for me. Once I'm out, we're good. Once you get off that couch, once you get out that door, you're in the car, you're on your way to that activity or outing or double date or whatever, it's good. Even for us introverts, I promise you. So with those four categories covered, how do I feel as I get ready to cross the bridge into my 60s? Well, first, grateful. The time with our kids and their families is precious, and it becomes even more precious every single year. We made the move to Fort Collins, Colorado, not quite 4 years ago, and it's turned out to be the perfect spot for a long list of reasons that I'll save for another day. So grateful is the first word that comes to mind. The second one is motivated. As all the masters athletes out there will understand, 60, that means a new age group. And it feels like 60 is a special one. For example, there's a big 10K here with about 45,000 people called the Boulder, and only one person over 60 broke 40 minutes in that 10K this year. So that would be a fun goal for next year. So some of those things are there. But more than that, I'm hoping, and maybe this is part of that I can be an encouragement for those who are over some specific age. Maybe it's 40, maybe it's 50, maybe it's 60. But for whatever reason, they're looking at age and they're thinking that's the primary driver. That's the primary limiter. That's the primary reason I can't fill in the blank anymore. Yes, I get it. Age matters. It is an undeniable factor of life. But we have a choice in the matter. A choice I'm hope to be able to model in some meaningful way for anyone who finds themselves on that pathway. So there you have it. The personal data, the core strategies from pretty average guy doing his best to walk the talk and be a catalyst through this journey of life. I hope you found some nugget or two in there for you somewhere. If you're looking for a starting point, here's a suggestion. Pretend, and it's kind of a fun suggestion. I think you'll have fun with this. Pretend you're recording your own version of this episode. Sit down with your journal or notebook or something and reflect on your own blood work, your own biometric results, your own physical assessment, your own whatever it is that you can track. How do they compare to last year? Not how do they compare to Brad. How do they compare to you a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Where's the trend line going? What routines and rhythms are you building into your day and thus your life? What has changed over the years, for better or worse? And what might that mean, or how might that direct you going forward? So spending a few minutes considering these and details are related to these, gang, that can provide such a firm foundation for your health, your wellness, and I think maybe especially your high performance, anything that you're really wanting to get after. And the next time you speak with your own personal board certified coach, these reflections provide an extremely valuable topic of discussion. Speaking of coaching, if your organization is looking to move beyond transactional employee health and well-being into a cutting-edge approach to support your team members in ways that are meaningful, Catalyst Coaching 360 may be worth a look. And if you're pursuing your own career as a board certified coach, our next cohort through Catalyst Coaching Institute kicks off soon. Please reach out, either one, any related topics, results at catalystcoachinginstitute.com. And now it's time to be that catalyst. This is Dr. Brad Cooper of Catalyst Coaching. I will speak with you soon on another episode of the Coaching Lab podcast, or maybe over on the YouTube coaching channel.